Welcome to the Conscient Conversations podcast. I'm Nigel Stevens, and in this podcast, I interview key people working in the data center, technology, and telecommunications industries. We discuss their stories and get their insights on the rapidly changing technology landscape. Welcome to the Conscient Conversations podcast. Today I'm joined by Rob Cooper from CBRE. Thanks for joining us, Rob. I appreciate you taking the time to chat to us. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Yeah, very good. Well, before we start, do you want to give everyone a quick introduction of who you are and what your role is at CBRE?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Rob Cooper. So I head up the data center advisory practice in EMEA for CBRE's data center solutions team. I guess my background is 20 plus years in the data center industry, so working for various operators over that time, more recently in consulting, and then now for CBRE, very much focused on working with enterprise clients, working on their data center strategy. That's anything from buying, selling, disposing of, migrating, benchmarking costs, and indeed, I guess primarily a lot of the co-location piece. So working with, again, large banks, large technology companies, and more so now, a lot of AI companies in sourcing suitable capacity to roll out their infrastructure for their various requirements.
Fantastic. I mean, it's no secret that you've become a respected figure in the industry and got a great career at CBRE. But I'm sure that didn't happen overnight. So where did you start from, and what was your journey like to where you are now?
I was going to say, so post-university, I started very much working for I guess more of a telecoms type business, and actually through that learned more about the sort of technology behind, telecommunications in general. Segued on to work for Adapt, which was a spin out from a company called Mnet. So back in the day, it was very much a reseller of level 3 space. So I think the first data center I visited was Goswell Road, which was the old gin factory, which was quite an interesting place. And having never known what a data center was, how it works, or even their existence, I think it was a bit of a shock. That moment when you sort of go, wow, there's a lot of technology behind everything that we do every day, and you don't realize it's there. So yeah, started there, spent a few years with those guys, and then as that evolved, went to work for Telecity. Worked there for around 5 years, and very much new business, really finding new clients to join the sort of Telecity facilities. And I think back then was early 2000s, so effectively it was very much, I guess, more carrier hotels, and the advent of data centers with larger compute was kind of evolving. So we had the Docklands facilities and Harbour Exchange, so very much selling single or maybe up to 5 or 10 racks, but all about the connectivity and the cross connectivity. And that evolved, and we built the Powergate facility, and suddenly we were having conversations around hundreds of kilowatts, and it was kind of the evolution of I guess client requirements, and indeed the technology and the engineering, the infrastructure behind it. So some good times there, and then moved on to Infinity very briefly, where you and I met, which was fantastic time there. But again, aspirations, I think, of being more of a wholesale vendor, and my experience to that point was very much more around sort of retail co-location. So very quickly moved on to CenturyLink, which was I guess spun out of the UK business whose name I've just forgotten, the managed service company. But again, quite an interesting take from a humongous US business at the time. And I think, interesting for me, we had some sites in Slough, so working on, again, almost using, I think, a lot of what I learned from Telecity to bring to some of these more emerging operators in the UK market. And I think it was interesting, sort of my input for those guys and how that evolved. And then you and I reconnected again at I/O, which was fantastic. I mean, I think for an exciting new technology concept, the modular data center within a data center fabric. So I think, fantastic time there, really bringing that, I guess, quite a disruptive product to market. And again, I think through that, and whilst I've been in BD roles throughout my career, it was very much an opportunity to really understand and embrace the technology, understand that the driver to from the marketplace to drive more density into racks. I think that was the evolution of those modules, where it was very much about being able to do 20 kilowatts a rack, without having humongous spaces between those racks. Very much contiguous solution. So interesting times. And then I think the advent, then I moved on to CS Technology, which have now been acquired by Accenture. I'm very much working with large financial service organizations, but again, very much more about consulting, understand the strategy behind what they're doing, why they're doing it, what informs those decisions, both commercial, from a legislative perspective, from a data sovereignty perspective, from a staffing, technology, operations perspective. So a much broader viewpoint for me, which I think it was fantastic after, many, 10 plus years or 15 years plus in working for a data center operated in quite a one-dimensional role. I think suddenly understanding the purpose behind it, so asking those additional questions of, I know you need 400 racks, what do you want it for, where do you need it to be, and why, what informs that decision, what are the sort of technologies and things you're deploying, how are you future proofing it, all those kinds of things. So I think quite exciting for me to understand the business case behind some of those technology decisions. And then that's found me segue into CBRE, where I've been for around 4 years now, heading up their business development function for EMEA, as I said. So and again, I think here it's such a vast and diverse team in terms of our capabilities. I've had to, I'm one of the few bodies in the building that's not a chartered surveyor. So I'm a sort of the alien in the room, but I think in a good way I bring a lot to the team, and their viewpoint and their understanding of why people buy, how they buy, what the trigger points are for those decisions. And effectively, I'm also learning, obviously, the implications of the property conversation in the IT journey. And I think that's, again, quite an interesting change of direction in a sense to my career, where I've suddenly got this new viewpoint from that property piece, which can both inform, prevent, or empower a decision around the IT strategy as well.
Yeah, brilliant. You've answered some of this already, I think, but how do you think the industry has changed since when you first started in data centers, to kind of where it is now?
I think the most notable thing is the maturity and the sophistication of some of the clients, the buyers. So I think certainly in my early days, it was a bit of a black art, data centers. It was kind of, the clients knew they needed something. They needed somewhere to put a couple of racks or some networking switches or something. And it was very much a seller's market in the operators would determine the price, the method by which they charged you, the meter powered, all the different sort of nuances, charging for cross connects and monthly fees and stuff. And it was kind of a bit of a no man's land and a bit of a wild west in terms of how each operator interpreted that. And I think through the advent of technology, the internet, the sophistication of buyers, and actually I think the focus of enterprise clients to dedicate teams and specialists and individuals within their businesses to focus on the acquisition, the procurement of these spaces, I think that's become not a challenge and not a negative for operators or advisors like ourselves, but I think it's become more interesting to actually engage with these savvy buyers and actually find them the solution they're looking for. They know what they need, and they know it's not that color, that size, that shape, or that geography. It's very specific, and it's in a good way, it's informed. They're more informed, so it makes the conversation generally happen quicker. But I think for some of the operators, they're lagging behind and still believe that their clients aren't as sophisticated as they are.
Yeah. I'm going to just change tack a little bit now, because many years ago you started a social gathering for people in the industry, which has actually turned into a bit of a networking forum, which is great. But how did that come about, and what's it become now?
I quite like this story because it came about, I think, when I was working with CS Technology. So when was that? Gosh, 2000 and where are we at now? 24. So 2018, 19. I think I was working with those guys. And it was kind of that moment where I think for CS Technology, a fairly small boutique business, they were family owned. They had offices in New York and London. something in Dubai as well in the past, but I think very unknown. But yet we had quite a large client base, the London Stock Exchange for one, some big financial service organisations. So for me, it was again bringing my knowledge of the data center world and my network. I had to find a mechanism by which to promote CS technology, what we did, how we could work with operators and other advisors and such. So for me, it was a case of setting up some, fairly low level, easy to get people together opportunity. And I came out with Rob's networking event, which was somewhat basic, but it was every sort of 6 weeks catch up with 50 friends and colleagues from or connections from the industry that I've known for a while. Got together in a pub. Everyone put some money behind the bar, and we sort of chipped in. And again, every 6 8 weeks, we had people from anything from consulting, structured cabling, fit out companies, data center operators. Again, the complete cross section of the industry would come together, meet people, generally just get on and have a social engagement, and it worked very well. We then had, unfortunately, obviously COVID and lockdown, so all those things ceased. And then as we were emerging from that, I genuinely had 5 or 6 people, as we were the country was warming up to being allowed back out again, asking me when my next event was. And I was kind of blown away. I was like, I'm amazed that people still remembered it or still were excited by it. So I happened to mention to my wife, who's a marketing director for a large IT company, that these events were in demand, and she asked what they're called, and I told her what they were called, and I can't repeat the words she used when I said it was Rob's networking event. But fundamentally, at that point in time, it was very much agreed that I should give it a real name. Hence, we launched Communico Networking. And again, it's the old adage of it's the Latin for communicate, community, be part of something and share. And I think that's the sort of the very simple virtues of the group itself. It's very much to be a part of something. It's not for anyone or anything. It's just to be part of a community that share knowledge. So we do that now. I think last year we did 6 events. This year there'll be 4. And again, it's so once a quarter, I guess. We have one sponsor or 2 sponsors who will headline it, and they take care of the bar tab effectively. And we get now 150 plus people at each one. And I think every time I'm surprised by the new faces, the people that come and talk to me and have been told to come to the events because they're so great. And I've had 3 or 4 friends of mine get reconnect with people and actually find new roles in new companies or new partners with that they can suddenly do work with. And I think that's the purpose. It's not corporate. There's no name badges. The purpose is to meet people over a drink. If you like them and you talk to them, then you find out what they do, then great, you can probably do business together. But it's about not turning people off from reading someone's badge from a company they may or may not like. So and so I guess from strength to strength, and it's I guess the challenge now is finding the venues to house everyone, keep everyone happy. But they're going really well. So looking forward to the next one. I think is the 5th of September.
Yeah, brilliant. Just again, sort of changing screens for a second. It seems to me that the data center industry is a bit of a pivot point at the moment, with the advent of AI, and how has that affected what you do?
It's made a huge difference actually, and I think in the last probably September last year, as a team, we started. AI is a big thing here. We need to be and have a view and a position on it. An understanding of the technology that's driving these crazy densities of racks, the crazy size, the scale of deployments, and so we've done a lot of work in that space. And I think for us, the transaction size has increased tenfold. Whereas a large deal for us 2 years ago was 2 megawatts. It's now 20. It's now 50 megawatts. The genuine, requirements that people are looking for these huge chunks of capacity. And I think for us, it's quite a unique position that we sit in, because obviously we don't own capacity, we don't sell our own facilities or anything like that. We very much work as the advisor in the middle of the market, so working for both the operator and the end client in finding a mutual relationship that works, that they both, one has what they need, the other one gets what they need. So I think for us, we have a lot of the operators asking us, what's the future look like? What should I be building my my facilities to do, because we've been told by Nvidia and other GPU guys that they're bringing out some new technology, and that's going to require liquid cooling and must do 120 kilowatts a rack, and it's a ton and a half per rack, and it's all these things. And I think that's the current model. Nvidia have almost hands up and said, well, we're going to do something every 6 months that's going to blow your mind. And that's exciting but terrifying, because I think at the moment, because of the speed of design and build of any data center, those operators are struggling to keep up with the now demand, because the now demand requires, in some instances, 90 kilowatts a rack plus. There's probably a handful of data centers on the planet that can do that today at scale. And by the time these guys, wherever they are, Norway, Europe, US, APAC, they catch up and they've finished their site in 2 years' time that they're building currently, it's going to be out of date. It's not going to be 120 kilowatts, so that rack will be laughed at, and it's going to be 250. So then they'll start that wheel again. So I think it's exciting. It's been a bit of a adrenaline injection for the entire industry. There's a lot more conversation. There's a lot more collaboration, and I think through operators, because of those challenges, are sharing ideas of how do we cope with these things. There's a lot more collaboration between the likes of Supermicro, Nvidia, Gigabyte, the GPU guys, and the integrators, with consultants like us, because they've got that same bottleneck where they've got clients with demand and they want to sell them, infrastructure, and they need to find somewhere to put it. So we're actually getting a lot more interaction with those guys, asking us to help their clients find capacity. So it's changed the rules in every way, and I think for everyone in an exciting way. And I think it's for us to help the market and the operators keep pace and actually manage the expectations of those end users, because I think there's often, I've got my GPUs in hand, I can go and deploy 300 megawatts tomorrow, and I think some of the immaturity of those GPU companies or the AI companies coming through is that, well, you're a team of 20 people globally, you've got your GPUs in hand, you haven't got the capacity, you haven't got the skill set, the knowledge, the workforce to go and deploy that at scale, at speed, in the darkest depths of Norway or wherever it may be. It doesn't exist. So there's often, I think what we're seeing is we talked about that immaturity or the maturity of enterprise buyers today is significantly higher than when it was when I started this 20 odd years ago. The reality is the AI guys and GPU as a service guys are often relatively new fledgling businesses. They are immature. They're immature in their knowledge of the market and their ability to deploy, and all of the, I guess, everything else that goes with that. So I think for us, it's very much our responsibility to educate both the operator and the enterprise or the AI clients as to those pitfalls, those challenges, those potential roadblocks, and help effectively smooth that transaction from both sides.
And I suppose that's actually where CBRE comes in, isn't it? Because I think you've got a range of activities, a range of things that you guys do, which is not exclusively just the single data center transactions, is it?
No, very much so. I think, as we said earlier, I think a lot of what we do here is informing that strategy. So we've deliberately pulled together a new digital infrastructure advisory team with Jeptha heading that up, and that's really to engage clients far earlier in their journey to make sure that we're informing a decision from a commercial perspective, from a technology perspective. So, if you're looking for a business transformation or transformation of your technology infrastructure, we can inform that. It might be that the outcome is you should improve the site you've got, improve the efficiency, spend X £100,000 on new chillers, new generators, whatever it may be. Or it might be actually it's end of life, or it's not suitable for you, Mr. Customer. We can sell it. We can, as in physical asset sale, we can do a sale and lease back. So effectively free up funds for you to continue the digital transformation, but take away that, that liability of the capex of a large building that you may not be using. So I think what's exciting about what CBRE can do is we're independent of everyone. We have a view on, as you said, multiple components of the conversation. It could be a land acquisition or sale. It could be an asset or just a colocation purchase. But I think because we have that broader view and broader capability as a team, I think what we like to be able to say is that we can take a client from a strategy perspective through to execution, through to deployment and run, all in one, under one banner. And again, in a completely open, transparent way. But I think that's often the case, and I think with most of the challenges I see within clients of any scale, enterprise or AI or whoever it may be, is often the disjoint between the I guess the stakeholders. So the CFO, the CTO, the CIO, the head of risk, the head of sustainability, they've all got a different challenge and a different thing to address. And I think our responsibility as CBRE is to be the advisor that brings together all of those stakeholders, those decision makers, to actually find that there is commonality in the solution which gives them all the outcome they want. By default, if you're being more efficient, you're saving money. So CFO is happy, head of sustainability is happy. If you can put that in a lower risk environment, you see the picture, you join it all up, and actually you ultimately get a comprehensive solution that isn't stuck in decision making, no man's land, and actually progresses things a lot quicker.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. I think we're probably drawing towards the end of this session, but one last question. If you could give somebody some advice who was joining the data center industry from your wealth of experience, what would that be?
Oh, it's a tough one. I think you need to understand the technology behind the data center. What's the purpose of a data center in its most basic form? Understanding the technology from a tiering perspective. What does tiering mean? What's latency? What is the infrastructure? What drives efficiencies and those things? And I think then, probably more importantly, understand the concept of not AI itself, but what infrastructure is required for AI to sit on. So why does AI drive density? What's a GPU? How many do you get in a rack? Those kinds of things. So understand the sort of basics, and I think you then have a good view of what's driving demand in every market or every type of client. And then I'd say if you're net new looking for a role, I would, you could go no further than, or you could do work and go to one of the larger data center operators in a certain role, either it's sales or operations or engineering, whatever it may be, and just get a sort of sense of what's going on. I think equally you could go for a smaller operator, and I think those are often really good because you get a real hands-on understanding of what makes things tick, how each department works together cohesively to actually get an outcome for that particular business. So, but yeah, I think first and foremost, understand the concept of the technology and the reasons that data centers exist. And I think the biggest challenge I'll make is if you can go to a party and someone asks you what you do and you mention data centers, if they don't know what a data center is, if you can explain in 3 or 4 sentences that if they're holding their mobile phone, and explain why everything they do goes to a data center, and if you can absolutely comprehensively explain that and make them understand in a very short space of time, then I think you've captured it.
Yeah, brilliant. We'll have to throw that challenge out to some people, I think. Well, look, Rob, thank you very much for sharing your experiences in the data center business. I'm sure we'll be seeing much more of you in the future, especially at your great Communico events. So that's very good. Thanks very much. We really appreciate it. All the best.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.